new music, it's been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming. So I'm tremendously excited to get back out there and release new music. The funny thing is I've never stopped writing, so I had all this music forever, but just didn't get a really just the way things unfolded, didn't get a chance to release it. So, when I was doing my stint in Nashville with my old band, for those 5 years, it was strictly about the band. We were writing for the band, and that's about 5 years right there. Just working on this this group project. And then when I decided to come back home, 2019, it was the first time in a while that I just picked up the guitar and started writing for myself again. And then I basically haven't stopped since I got back home. So just been writing a ton. And so I have 3 songs in the pipeline. I'm actually going to go end of this month to record another one. And I just want to be releasing a lot of music again, man. So tentatively, the first single is going to be released in February. Which song that is, I'm not sure. Once I get the finished mixes, I'll have a better idea of which horse takes the lead there. But it's been fun. It's been really fun.
So yeah, you mentioned 5 years in Nashville. You get back to
Yeah.
Hamilton in 2019, and then there's 2 years of this like little pandemic thing. So that makes it
Yeah.
hard to release new music as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny too because a lot of the songs, almost all the songs that I write these days, I write with my writing partner Paul Stevens, and he's still out in Nashville. So when I came back home, him and I were doing the Zoom writes already, right? Because he's an incredible lyricist, and he really knows how to help bring my ideas. He knows how to land the plane with me, as we say. So we were doing this, like what you and I are doing right now. I'd have an idea, him and I would shoot it back and forth, and we'd write these songs. So it was funny to see, several months later when everybody's like, "Oh my God, we got to do Zoom writes, and we got to do," which is usually, ideally you want to be in the same room with these writers. We were like, man, this is old news for us now. This has kind of been our habit for the last little while. So that wasn't different. And but it didn't. The pandemic didn't slow down our writing. I know I've talked to different musicians. I'm sure you have on the pod where either you were writing a ton or you weren't writing at all. It just really depended on the individual. And where I was at, I think the first month or two of the pandemic, I wrote like 14 songs. Just constantly just writing and writing, and then got into the studio last summer to start recording. And then, like you said, got married, and there was all this other stuff happening. So some things I've never met a deadline with my singles. I've never, I've always ideally said, okay, fall of 2022 is when the music, and I've just never been able to do it, and but I feel good about February, so I think I'll meet that deadline.
Maybe that's why with Canadian Idol they make you record that single in advance. They're like, we're,
Yeah,
we're gonna make him make that deadline for sure.
yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the pandemic inspired you to write a lot, or it gave you more time to write a lot, and you were saying some people it was the opposite. And a lot of musicians I talked to, it like wiped them out, where basically, with all this chaos in the world, they felt like, what's the point? Like, what are my little songs doing when all these people are dying? Like, they felt like it was unnecessary, or they felt like, maybe we're never going to be playing live shows again. So, they didn't feel the motivation because maybe I'm stuck with my songs that are never going to see the light of day. So it was weird. There was two camps that,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I looked at it differently. It just therapeutically it helped me. And then that was my release. And I think just that creative brain, I think, it's good to keep it stimulated in creating different things. So for me, it kept things sharp for me, and just kept on just kept on the habit of writing, because there it is a bit of a release for me. I always felt better after a write. As far as if they were gonna go out into the world or not. I mean, I usually don't write for that. Maybe that's the case down the line, you know, but for me, it's about just getting in there and creating something that I'm really proud of for the day. And then where it goes after that, you know, we'll see. But for me, it was just that outlet that I needed at the time.
Can you talk about the writing and recording process? So I assume there are some challenges during the pandemic, but you mentioned that you had already been using Zoom before. Um, yeah, maybe talk our listeners through the listeners that maybe aren't musicians, aren't familiar with what it's like to write and record an album. If you can kind of dive into what it's been like for those 4 songs for you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it all starts with the songs first. So, um, when I moved back home, like I said, I started to write with my writing partner Paul Stevens, and for me, my music ideas, like the progression and the melodies, kind of happen at the same time. A lot of times where I'll be playing around with a riff or a melody, and I like my melodies will kind of have shapes, so I'll sort of mumble words or sounds that I know where and how I want it to sound like. I just don't know exactly what it is I'm saying, right? And I'll get to that point, and then usually when I have a concept or a title of what I want to actually sing about, I'll reach out to Paul. Him and I will get together, and at that point, I probably already have a structure of the song and the hooks of where I want to go. Might even have a title and a concept, and then Paul and I will. A lot of times, the songwriting is like what you and I are doing is through the talking process. So if I'm telling you, you know, let's say, you know, the one song I wrote for my wife for the wedding. I mean, you know, the subject is that's a love song, and it's a, you know, but
I'd hope it's a love song.
of course, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And so that's a love song, but there's so many different angles on how you can approach a love song, and how can I resonate it with my own story, right? So that song's called "Something About Her," and I remember when him and I were just having conversations and we were talking. I remember when she walked into the room before her and I had a conversation. I said to my friends like several times, "Man, there's something about her. Man, there's something about her. There's something about her." And that moment in time is what created the framework for that song, right? So it is called Something About Her, but I can resonate with that. So then I'm in a writing session with Paul. We finally write the lyrics and everything that comes together. And actually, I wrote that with Andrew McTaggart and Susie McNeil as well. So it was the 4 of us on that one. And then I have these songs. And then at a certain point, I had, you know, dozens and dozens of songs. I probably wrote like 100+ songs in like 2 years. So then it's the songs that are resonating for me. So, and then as far as how you record the record, a lot of you can approach it a lot of different ways depending on what your style is and what you want to do. For me, I got into the studio and I co-produced it with my friend Carm Miliotto in Hamilton at their studio called Studio 410, and they got a really great space, great live room. They have a Neve console, really really great. So then it was just getting the players involved, and sometimes we'll do some pre-production. So pre-production is, see, for me, a lot of times you can actually like demo up songs. So you have Ian Thornley who demos up the song, and he has all these parts set and ready to go. Mine was a little bit different, where I had work tapes. I didn't want to get too influenced from me creating a demo. So I had work tapes just really rock, and the song stand on its own as just like an acoustic singer songwriter's tune. And now how will that feel with the band? And then it's giving the songs to the guys, giving them a feel and references as far as what I'm going for, and then we find something, we find a wave, and we try to write it right. So at that point, once we have the songs down, the main thing is making sure you get the drums, and that the drum sounds are great, and then you get the rhythm section, so the bass. Um, Once those are done, then we may have some rough guitar helping them in the room at that moment. That's how we approached it. But then the next day we went in with Andrew McTaggart, and he laid down all the guitar parts for that. I lay down my vocals, and then my harmonies, and then keys, and one song. My friend, who's an incredible violinist, she there's a whole like string quartet on this one tune that I have called "In the Air," and she's still in Nashville, so she actually sent those tracks to us here. So thank God for technology these days. So and then you get the song to a great place, and now where I've been with those songs, I've gone to the mixing process. So now I have a mixing engineer, and basically a mixing engineer, their job is to make you sound really, really great. So you have all these raw files of all these songs, all these tracks that you've recorded from bass to vocals to guitar, and now it's trying to make it sound like $1 million, and that's where we're at right now. And then you will master that process. So mastering is kind of like the way I compare it to is like if I were to wash my car and it's really clean, mastering is like the coat of wax that really gives it that extra like shine, right? So it is a bit of a process, to really try to make it sound great. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's people that are just track guys that there's no other musician there. They may just have a track guy that's sitting there on a computer, and he's coming up with bass parts on his keyboard and program drums, and it's, you hear it a lot in like a lot of the LA sounds. So it all depends on your approach, but that was my specific approach.
And do you have a favorite part of the recording process? Some musicians like the writing of the songs, some like the fleshing out of the songs with other musicians, some like being in the studio, whether it's, jamming with musicians in the studio, some like recording the vocals, some love just doing the harmonies, some like being in there for the mixing. Is there one part that you love more than the rest? Some people, not only that they love one part more than others, some people dread certain parts. Like they love writing the songs, but they hate doing their own vocals in the studio, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say there's 1A, 1B for me. So obviously songwriting. So when you get a song that you feel you nailed, and you get really excited about, that never gets old for me ever, because it's like I wake up that morning, I'm like, this song did not exist when I woke up this morning, and now I have this living, breathing thing that I can call my own, right? So that process I love. The next process is when I'm with the musicians, and I'm watching the song evolve in front of my eyes. So if I'm sitting down, and all of a sudden I actually finally hear a rhythm section to my song, and I'm like, oh my God, it's breathing all this cool life into it. And then my Andrew comes in with a guitar lick that just adds another beautiful hook or vibe to it that I didn't think it would go to. That excites the hell out of me of where these songs go, right? So those are my two favorite. I'll say I mean, singing in the studio is fun, but yeah, you're your worst critic. So you can like I'm infamous for like wanting to take another like there's some producers that just say just give me 2 3 takes, that's it. Like if it was up to me, I'd be singing 20 30 takes as much as I can, because I just want to have as much out there as possible and make sure that I do my best. And it's usually overkill, but just for my sanity, I have to get it out there.
There's nowhere to hide as a singer in the studio. It's
No.
not like you're in the bathroom and you're just drowning in reverb and everything sounds amazing. When you're just up close with a mic, it's like
Yeah.
you're hearing exactly what your voice sounds like. So singers, when they hear themselves recorded for the first time, they're like,
Yeah.
that's what I sound like. We actually hear ourselves different than we sound like, because we're hearing kind of from the inside.
Yeah.
The we hear the voice kind of bouncing off our skulls. There's different things. So when you hear yourself the first time, you're like, that's what I sound like. It sounds a little more nasally than I hear myself,
Yeah. I find too, like one thing where I feel like, oh, okay, I got to tighten up on that in the studio is locking in rhythmically, vocally is really key. So when you're on tempo and it's this groove as far as pocket, because if you're a good singer, you sing the notes, it's good, but how pocketed can you be with the music, and you may be just a hair off or before or after, and it doesn't give the right vibe, right? I have one song that's going to be released called Chasing Arrows, and the chorus, it has to be on the right tempo. And if I'm singing too fast or too slow, it does not feel right. So it has to feel pocketed, right? And if you don't have enough like air in your diaphragm or certain things like that where you feel like you're losing a bit of breath, that can be a challenge sometimes. But that really, the whole studio process and recording process, that really helped me pocket my vocal much better with bands. So when I actually go and play live, that I'm locked in more.
Speaking of recording vocals, do you have a favorite vocal mic in the studio? And then maybe live, is there a certain mic that you normally use that sounds great on your voice? Everyone has a different voice. So I have a high
Yeah,
nasally voice that sounds nothing like how I speak. And there's a certain mic that kind of shaves off the high mosquito piercing
yeah,
frequencies and kind of, you know, rounds out with the low end of the voice.
yeah. Funny enough, the first couple albums that I did, um, for some reason, each producer would always like the SM7, the simple SM7 $500 mic, always liked my voice. So they had, I'd be in these studios and they have like these $5,000 mics, and I'm singing the $500 SM7 mic, and for whatever reason, it matches well with my voice. But I would say those my first two albums. That's what I sang. This one, oh man, Carm, you're gonna kill me, buddy, if I get this wrong. What the hell was it? It was a Telefunken. I think we sang from a Telefunken. I forget exactly what model of mic I was singing from, but that was a great mic as well too. But yeah, for the most part, a big chunk of it was just the simple SM7.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you're working with Mark Capaferri as an engineer or a producer or mixer or something?
Yeah, yeah, mixing engineer. Yeah, yeah.
Mixing engineer.
I was just messaging him about it right before I hopped on the podcast with you.
Awesome. So I know Mark from my time at Metalworks. So he was also at
Oh, okay.
Metalworks.
Yeah.
And I have some kind words sent in from Mark Capaferri. Here we
Oh, did
go.
you reach
So
out to Mark?
I did. Yeah, I did my homework. So he says, I really dig working with Brian. He's a great singer songwriter and he has a ton of passion that comes through in his performance. There's just something about his voice, and he takes his craft so seriously that it makes my job easy. He gives 100% every time. As a person, well, he's a great guy, good hearted, and we share the same family values. It must be the European thing, lol. What can I say? I love the dude. We've become good pals. So that's Mark Capaferri.
Mark, I love you, buddy. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense now because he said good luck on the pod today. So
He's
he
in the
knew. I was like,
loop.
he's in the loop. Well, first, kudos to you for uh, taking so much care in the pod with your guests. I know you do this a lot with your other guests, and that says a lot about you. So thanks for going out of your way to make your guests feel good about themselves. Especially on a Monday. So
Yeah, the gloomy Mondays.
so thank you. Yeah, I can only echo what he said about me and throw it back to Mark. Mark, we got introduced from my co-producer Carmiliotto a couple years ago. We knew of each other, but didn't really spend that much time together. And the one thing I can say about Mark is like he has treated my songs like his own. And like going back to the whole analog and going through tape and stuff, like he's the one that's saying, he goes, Brad, you're gonna kill me. I know you wanted these songs done, but because he's out in Jukasa, and what he did was he's teaching there, and a couple of the guys there, he's like, okay, I'm gonna put, and he used my song as an example. He's like, okay, I'm gonna put the bass and the bass drum and the snare. I'm gonna put a couple of these through tape just to show you guys the difference. And he heard it, and he's like, oh my god, this sounds really good. And he called me, he's like, Bry, you're gonna kill me, but what do you think about you know putting all the tracks through tape, and then we'll go and mix it, and then we'll put it through tape again, right? And for the listeners, tape is basically all those great albums that we were talking about all went through tape, and tape really gives that lush, smooth sound,
There's a
and
warmth.
there is a beautiful warmth, right? So, and especially like the style of music, that acoustic rock that I'm doing, and it being more organic is kind of asking for it. Um, but he wants to take the time and the effort to get all that done. So 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 he's been doing that, and it's been really uh, helping the songs sound that much better. And I'm super excited for them to be completed, which hopefully in the next few weeks they will be. But it having someone like that in my corner, along with his brother Rob, uh, the two of them have just been like they've treated the songs like their own, and that's all you can ask for it. He could have easily just like mixed these things in 2 3 days and then be done with it, but that's just not his style. He holds a high standard, and it's been fun to work with him. So I love his passion as well.